Hi. I don't really know how to start out this video, which I guess is kind of the point, but I've been going through a lot of revelations lately, especially when it comes to dating. And I think I've learned a few things. I feel like a lot of you feel the same way. You could be lying in bed, scrolling through Hinge or Tinder or Bumble, and you're just talking to all these people, but you feel like nothing's really kind of blossoming from these conversations. They kind of go nowhere. You either get ghosted or you ghost someone, or things just fizzle out. Rarely does it even lead to actually going on a date. And it kind of makes you a little bit jaded just about modern dating in general and the state of romance. I mean, you go on TikTok and you're just consumed and plagued with all of these videos of like, women have to act this way, men have to act this way. What do you bring to the table? Make him do XYZ. Like, it's kind of overwhelming to think that you're never actually doing anything right. But I don't know, it gets a little, I think I got to a point where I went through a couple of stages of emotions where I was like, oh, it's exciting at first. And then it's like kind of intimidating, and then it's draining, and then you get into a relationship maybe and it doesn't work out and it's exhausting, and you're like, I'm never gonna do this again. Maybe I'll never find the one. Maybe I'm just gonna die alone with 16 cats. But throughout all of this and throughout dating in my 20s, I think I've learned a couple of things that I've summed up into 5 main lessons. And I thought I'd share those with you because if I kind of heard someone say it to me a little bit earlier, I may have approached dating a little bit differently, and I may not have been so cynical or may not have hurt myself so much in the process, because trust me, I am someone who loves to hurt my own feelings. So without further ado, here are the 5 lessons I've learned from dating in my 20s. So number 1 is actually one of the hardest things that I've had to learn, and it's also applicable in every aspect of my life, not just in dating. It's quite literally applicable in everything. It's called learning not to have control. You can't make anyone do anything, right? I think we all know that deep down. We all try to hold on to this control as if we somehow have any influence over what somebody else does, but we don't. You can't make someone want to date you. You can't make somebody treat you the way that you want to be treated, and most importantly, you definitely can't make somebody love you. And that's the thing. We all think that we can, right? If we act a certain way, we act right. Maybe if we cook dinner for them all the time, or we text back really fast, or maybe we don't text back fast enough and make them chase. All this stuff, like maybe at the end of the day, we could control what they do, but we can't. And the thing is, it really boils down to this, it's just, so what? So what if they don't want a relationship? So what if they don't want to treat you right? So what if they want to break up with you? Let them be that way. You cannot control what their actions are. The only thing you can control is how you react to them. And the sooner you learn that, the less you will be hurt in the long run, because this is probably one of the hardest lessons to learn. Like, for example, when you were a kid, think about when your parents or your mom was like, nagging you to clean your room. You didn't want to clean your room. I feel like sometimes out of spite, even if my mom told me to clean my room, I just didn't do it. But then one day you wake up and you're like, dude, my room is a mess. It's actually pretty gross. So you start picking up the clothes on the floor and you start doing laundry and you start making your bed. And that's just life in general. There's quite literally nothing that she could have done, like your mother could have done, to make you want to clean. You just woke up one day and you want to clean. So that's the same thing with other people. That logic applies. So just think back on maybe your situationship, which I honestly hate that word, but that's just really applicable to modern dating, your relationship or anything like that. Think back to all of those times that you spent hunched over your phone just waiting for them to text you, or stalking their Snapchat score or their Instagram following, refreshing. Don't you feel like all of that time seems a little bit wasteful? Like, what did you get from it, right? Did it make you any happier? If anything, it made you feel worse, right? Every little thing that you found, you started jumping to conclusions, and you just feel worse at the end. So it's like, doesn't all that time that you spend doing that to make yourself feel bad feel kind of pointless. People will never do something that they don't want to do. And unfortunately, we can't make them want to do anything. So why beg them to? Why waste that effort? Channel all that time and energy into something that'll make you happy, right? Like, maybe read that book you've been procrastinating, or start that art project that you haven't had inspiration to, or I don't know, go for a walk. Something like that. Let them treat you badly, and then let them go. And then let yourself find something new. Number 2, love does not have to be a roller coaster. Yeah, that's a big one as well. I think for a lot of us, we've been lied to by TV shows and movies and books that we've read that love has to be this crazy, stressful, volatile thing, and it has to make you just so nervous and anxious, but at the end it's all worth it, right? Because the guy, the bad boy, will fall for you, or like his walls will come down and he'll let you in, and you can fix him, or you can fix her, or you can fix them. Like, you know, we are all deluded into thinking that that's how love really is. But as an adult, I personally don't think you should be losing your mind over somebody not texting you back. Doesn't that seem a little bit juvenile when you really think about it? Like, you ever just sit down and like process that you've been just staring at iMessage for 3 hours waiting for that little chat bubble to pop up? At your big age, that seems a little illogical. You shouldn't be stressing out over when they're gonna text you back, or if their following goes up, or like stalking their location every few seconds. It's such a common misconception that love has to be this crazy roller coaster, and that it should never be boring. It should always be fireworks and sparks and everything like that, which is true, right? You should definitely have like a spark and a romantic connection with whoever that you're dating. But those are also not permanent things, right? Relationships should not be built off the foundation of sparks. It should be built off of a mutual appreciation and understanding of each other. And sometimes that might seem boring, you know, but that's okay. I think we've confused quote unquote boring with calm or with peaceful. Reality is, a good love should really make you feel calm and secure and safe and comfortable, right? You should have full trust in your partner. You shouldn't be just wondering what they're doing, who they're talking to, what are they saying behind my back, all this. Like, you shouldn't be going through all of that. And if you are, then it goes to show that you might just need to reevaluate that relationship, because why do they make you feel so anxious all the time? And why are you okay with that? So I actually have a friend who recently told me that she wasn't really sure about a guy that she's been seeing because he seemed a little too boring. Even though everything that she's gone through with this guy, he's seemed to show that he's consistent in his communication and that he cares about her, and he goes out of his way to make her feel comfortable and to make their dates good. And so I'm like, why is that a bad thing, right? I guess sometimes I like look back now after she told me this to my past relationships, and then I looked at some of her past relationships, and I'm like, well, it's because our past always makes us question things. Like the past people we've been with, we always question things like, when are they gonna text me back? Or like, are they ever gonna actually ask me out to be their partner? Are they ever gonna commit to me? Are we just wasting time here? We're always asking all of these questions. And the thing is, we always gravitate towards people that will amplify our biggest insecurities about ourselves. And that's because when they eventually do validate us, which may be rare, but it does happen, it feels like a reward. It's like a drug, right? These sorts of relationships or situationships that you have, the ones that like keep you questioning yourself all the time, it keeps you latched onto these people because of the emotional instability of it all. You get such like low lows of like not hearing from them for days, but then the moment you get that text message, you get such a high that is really hard to be replicated. And it's really hard to be found in like a really secure relationship. And I definitely also blame these like chick flicks that we watched growing up, or like these TV shows about how like you have to break through all of these barriers finally at the end to get that one magical kiss, and like he changes everything for you, which reality is that's not really the case, especially not when you're dating in your 20s. I'm sure there is somebody out there that, you know, fits that mold, but most of the time, especially if it's some guy you met on Hinge, it's not really going to be the case here. And if you really think about it, that person who gives you that much anxiety, they're not the one. Because wouldn't the one actually want to date you? Or wouldn't they actually want to stay with you? Or wouldn't they want to try and meet your needs and compromise? The truth is, a person who truly, truly wants you wouldn't make you even have any of these questions in the first place. Their answers will be shown in not just their words, but in their actions towards you, right? So the real questions that you need to ask, and you actually need answers for, are more so for you. So why do you pursue a love that you know deep down isn't really working? Or why do you feel so insecure about that person? Is it because of something that they did to you? Or did they hurt you before? Or is like inconsistency, like they don't communicate well with you? Or is it completely internal? Because sometimes I think we externalize a lot of our insecurities and we project that onto our partner. And sometimes they don't even deserve it. A lot of the times they don't deserve it, right? If you enter a new relationship, they're not responsible for the traumas that you experienced in your past. Like if you had a really toxic relationship with a guy who was emotionally abusive and he never met your needs and he never listened to you and he always invalidated your feelings and gaslit you, right? When you enter a new relationship with that person and you're not fully healed and you project that onto that person, how is that fair to them? They've never given you a reason to feel that way. You're starting a relationship off on the completely wrong foot, having these pre-misconceptions about somebody. So your goal at the end of the day should be to find a love that is consistent and makes you in a state of peace and not a state of chaos, which we've all confused for love. So yeah, ask those questions to yourself and see if you have the answers. And if you don't, maybe you need to do some healing. And that's not to say you can't do that with a partner, but some healing may be required. Lesson number 3 is that there's literally no wrong way to date. This one was a big one for me after entering into singlehood, after being in a couple of long-term relationships pretty much back to back, is that I thought when I first, entered into singlehood, is that dating is kind of cookie cutter, especially in our modern day era. But I've come to realize that it's really all just buzzwords, right? And all this stuff that you see online is just engagement farming and rage baiting. And logically speaking, I knew that, right? But when you're in an emotionally vulnerable state of I don't know what my future holds. Am I ever gonna find the love of my life? I'm heartbroken, this and that and that. You're very susceptible to falling for this kind of stuff, right? So, and you know what I mean? Stuff you gotta play the game. You can't text back too fast. You can't be too available. You need to have a roster, blah, 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 blah. In all honesty, tune that out. Don't listen to that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know, unless you want to, and that's kind of what you want to do with your dating life. But what I mean is go with what you actually want instead of what other people think that you need to do. So for me, I like to call myself a self-proclaimed lover girl. I feel like a lot of people do too. And for all you so-called lovers out there who feel like they're becoming really, really jaded with the current state of dating, with the dating apps and ghosting and all of this stuff and casual hookups, you have to remember that you don't actually have to be that way, right? You don't have to follow what everybody is doing. Just because somebody else is doing that or just because that's the most common way to date doesn't mean that you have to do it. If you're not comfortable with talking to multiple people at the same time or going on dates with multiple people at the same time, then that's completely fine. Go and find one person, put your heart out there and do that and invest in that one person. That's okay. But remember that good things take time. If that's the route that you choose, then it might take a lot longer for you to form a solid connection with somebody. But it's okay. It'll happen, right? It'll happen in time. And if that's the way that you prefer to date, then date the way that you want to date. Know what you want and act accordingly. If you want to go on cute little wholesome brunch dates and go to IKEA and buy furniture and plan your future house and all that stuff, why would you try and settle for some dude you met at the club who literally just wants to sleep with you? You can't force somebody to fit into this mold of what you want. And at the same time, you also can't force yourself into a mold. If all these people on the internet is you gotta be seductive and a siren and you have to be a nonchalant, chill girl, cool guy, chill guy, all of that stuff. If that's not for you, you can't force yourself to fit into there. If you have a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions, then you shouldn't be afraid of expressing them to whoever you want to pursue a relationship with. Because if you are, then why are you with them, right? If you're afraid that expressing your feelings or being truly yourself is going to push someone away, then isn't that just a sign that that person isn't meant for you? Like, think back on all of your exes, right? How many times has like an ex of yours done something really crazy and out of pocket that you probably shouldn't have let slide, but you did anyway? And like, you tell your friends about it, and they're like, leave him, leave them, leave her, like, they're crazy, like, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, no, and you were justifying all of their actions, and it didn't matter if it was a red flag, an ick, or whatever, like, you were just completely okay with being like, no, and looking at their side. Because when you actually like somebody, very little things that they do will be able to push you away, right? When you actually like someone, even the cringiest things become cute, and even the weirdest things become attractive. That's just how it is. Like, so think about it from the opposite perspective, right? If somebody really, really, truly likes you, there's very few things that you can do to actually push them away. Unless you, like, murder them or something. I don't know. Because let's just say you follow modern dating advice that you don't like. And you do the 3-month rule, the 5-date rule, like all this, like, stuff that you see online, right? And then you act a certain way, like, oh, I'm gonna wait like a couple hours to text back, or oh, I'm gonna never express my needs and be like that cool, nonchalant partner, right? Reality is, at some point, that mask is coming off, unless you want to pretend to be someone that you're not forever. All of these things that you see most of the time are just protection mechanisms. We're all afraid of being hurt. Love is so painful when it goes wrong, and it really, really sucks. So who wants to go through all of that again? So people make all these rules and regulations about how you should date people and what to do to minimize yourself getting hurt. But we're gonna get hurt regardless. Love is literally a huge risk. And every time that you put yourself out there, you're putting yourself out there to get hurt. But the thing is, like, how will you ever find the love of your life and your person if you're not out there? That person's not gonna magically appear on your doorstep ready to pop the question when you're ready to get married. You have to really put yourself out there, and in that process, you're gonna have to deal with some failed relationships, some what-if situationships, and people that you thought were the one, but actually aren't. Love is a risk. You're handing your heart to someone on a silver platter, along with all of your flaws and your insecurities and your most vulnerable parts of you, and you're asking for them not to freaking crush it in their hand. It's scary, but if love is truly what you want, then there's no avoiding that potential of being hurt. Because love is the highest risk and highest reward thing that we have, and the closest thing that we have to magic. So acknowledge that it's impossible for you to never get hurt when you put yourself out there for love. But always know that at the end of the day, no matter what happens with whoever, you're going to be okay. And that's how you should date. Number 4. And this is a very recent lesson that I've learned as well. And I think it's something that we don't really all think about because we all have different dating goals. But I guess this might not apply to you. But lesson number 4. Not everybody that you meet or that you date needs to be the love of your life. And let me expand on this. I know a lot of people date to marry, and that's okay. And I used to think that that's the only way that I should date somebody. Why would I waste time with someone if I don't see a future with them or that they're my life partner? And I felt like that made me so restrictive in the people that I would meet. Because I think we all internally have this sort of like checklist of who we want our future partner to be like these attributes, whether they're physical or whether they're like characteristics and qualities that we want. Like they have to be kind or like want kids in the future, be college educated preferably, maybe tall, if we all get a little superficial sometimes, dress nice, etc. Or like, some like a woman who cooks or, stuff like that. We all have this sort of criteria that our perfect partner should meet or we want them to meet. And I also used to think that everybody that I dated or gave a chance to, even casually, had to meet those check boxes. And as I kind of went through life, I started realizing that that really stops me from making some good connections. In trying to pursue someone that checks every box, I am putting myself into a box. How many times have you gone through, like let's say with food? You have a favorite food your entire life and then you try something new and that becomes your new favorite food, right? That happens with connections as well. If we keep pursuing this one set standard that we've spent our whole life thinking is the only one that we should go for, we might be missing out on some great people that we didn't know existed or that we weren't open-minded to. The thing is, great connection doesn't always have to be love. And you can also have feelings for somebody that you don't end up marrying, and that's okay. Sometimes love can be lessons, like I've kind of talked about, and sometimes love can just be good connection, or it doesn't even have to get to love, or casual dating, I guess, is more common. And if you want someone to just cuddle up in the wintertime or sleep with, then that also works too, right? Whatever your needs are. When you have all of these check boxes, you find yourself finding reasons to say no to people. Like, for example, if you look on a dating app and you look through someone's profile, and then you're like, oh, like this person looks pretty cool, but ooh, they're a little short, or oh, this person looks pretty cool, but like I don't really like their job, or oh, their prompt is a little boring, or they look weird in that picture. Like, we find reasons to say no to people. Maybe it's we're afraid of wasting time, maybe we're afraid they won't be the one, maybe we're afraid of getting hurt, all of this stuff. But I think that dating can be a game of chance sometimes, and that's okay. Not every single person that you go out with needs to be... What is happening outside? Not every single person that you go out with or spend time with needs to be your future husband or wife. You can just have a good time and have fun with it, especially in your 20s. I think there's such like pressure to figure everything out in your 20s, especially when you were younger. You were like, oh, by the time, because I'm like about to turn 24, I was like, oh, by the time I'm 24, I'm gonna be engaged and I'm gonna have a house and I'm gonna be making like $200K and all of this stuff. Like, I had all these expectations for myself and where my life is supposed to be in my 20s, and dating was a huge part of it. Having like a relationship, a strong relationship, has always been in my idea of a good future. And I think that makes me really anxious when it comes to dating. Like, every single person that I talk to needs to be the one. He needs to be the one. I'm on a time crunch. I'm on a timeline. Like, I need to find the one by XYZ if I want to get engaged by 28 and I want to have kids by this and this and this and this. All this stuff, like, just, I've realized recently I can just let it go. I usually used to, like, not resonate with this phrase, but it's true. I can just go with the flow. If I take a chance on someone and I go out with them and we have a good time, maybe there are some things I don't see me and them kind of aligning with on the long term, but I like spending time with them, you know? I like talking to them. It's intellectually stimulating, or they're entertaining, or they're funny. Like, why not go on a second date, right? Even if we're not meant to be, why not? You know, it's your 20s is your time to experiment, to take chances, take risks, and really figure out what you want, because what you think you want might not actually be what you need. I've gone through a lot of situations where the people that I've dated weren't necessarily my type on paper, but they ended up being incredible people that I learned so much from and that I really cared for. So don't close yourself off to potential partners and potential great connections, because they don't seem to be the love of your life. And finally, number 5, it's a big one, it's a doozy. Don't let love consume you to the point where you lose yourself. As a hopeless romantic person who watches way too many rom-coms and sappy movies, this was the hardest lesson for me, and it's one that I still struggle with, because when I love someone I love really hard, it can be all-consuming. Like, every waking thought can be about them, which is not healthy. But that's what I grew up thinking love has to be. It's like, it has to just basically like take over my bones, and like I have to yearn for them, and I can't breathe without their presence, and XYZ, like all of that. That's beautiful and poetic, right, on paper. But in our current reality, that may not be the best. I've learned as I've aged that love in itself really isn't enough. which is a hard pill to swallow because you'd like to think that if they wanted to, they would, right? It's such a big phrase that we hear everywhere is if they wanted to, they would. If they wanted to be with you, then they would be with you. But that's not the case sometimes, and I know firsthand for myself that it wasn't the case either. There are so many people that I've pictured myself with forever. And I feel like everyone that I do fall in love with, I picture myself with forever. But there are some factors that really come into consideration and come into play here that I just can't control, whether that be distance or our futures not aligning or finances or things like that. But I really did used to think that if I loved them hard enough, that all of those would be overcome. But the sad thing is, that's just not true, because that sort of mindset made me sacrifice a lot of my happiness and a lot of my mental stability, for lack of better words, putting who I love above myself and my needs really turned into something bad. What inherently was supposed to be like a positive thing, or me trying to do a good thing, is just give my heart to someone and really truly care about them. It got to a point where it became bad for me. I was in long distance relationships, and I really loved my partner. And I thought that, you know what, it's okay, like I love them so much, like it will overcome all of the distance for me. But I knew deep down that my happiness would always be compromised if I were to enter that sort of relationship, because I'm the type of person is that quality time is a main love language of mine, and acts of service, and those are things that can't really be done over the phone. And I knew that I wanted someone to share day-to-day moments with, and I knew that I was someone who took a lot on my plate and was sometimes a workaholic. So finding that balance of having to call for a couple hours every day was very difficult for me. And I always knew that I wanted somebody to kind of like supplement my life. Like I could come home to them, or we could just grab dinner and then like go our separate ways. Like someone who supplements my life, right? Complements my life. But a long distance relationship just never worked for that. And so for years, I really tried to convince myself that because I love them, it would be enough. By the end of that relationship, I was completely devastated. I was the most depressed and heartbroken I've ever felt. Not to the fault of that person, but because I knew that all of my emotional capacity was going towards trying to maintain that relationship, and there wasn't much left at that point, much emotional capacity and much that I could handle. And unfortunately, I knew that if I kept going down this path, like I would grow resentment for that person, which is, it's not their fault. It's a relationship I willingly entered, and it's a love that I willingly gave them, but it was swallowing me whole. And I knew that over time that would grow into a resentment for that person that wasn't deserved. So I had to end things. And that's when I knew, like, the way that I love somebody is not sustainable in the long term. I lose myself in loving someone else, which isn't how it should be, especially not as you get older. You should be with a partner that makes life feel easier and who improves your quality of life and that complements your life, whatever your life is, right? And that's a lesson that I had to learn really recently, and that I'm still learning. Even now, like, if I talk to somebody or text someone, I find myself like picturing months and months and months and months in advance with them, even after just like talking for like 10 minutes or something, or like we exchange a look at the bar and suddenly I hear like music and romantic fanfare in my head, and I'm like, oh, I'm picturing us on dates and like us getting married and all this. It's the hopeless romantic in us, and we all know that that stuff is just not real. But maybe it's an addiction to the emotions that we feel in love, right? Maybe that's what we really yearn for. Maybe it's not the person. Maybe it's the feeling of being in love. Like I talked about, those high highs, low lows. It's euphoric when you love someone. And sometimes when you don't have someone or you don't have the right person, you try to do everything that you can to still replicate that euphoric feeling. Because there's nothing else in the world that feels as good as being in love with someone and being loved. But that's not sustainable, you know? Like, just trying to chase that feeling is not sustainable. Like, a long rambling short, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of that energy should be channeled inwards. I've stopped trying to chase love, and I'm going to let love happen when it's supposed to happen. And instead, I'm focusing on a different sort of love, which I know you all are going to think is cliche because everybody says it, but it's self-love. I know it sounds so corny, but it's true. Pour that time and energy and dedication into things that would make you love yourself more. Like for me, it was stepping back from a couple projects that weren't making me happy anymore. Starting this channel is a long-term goal that I've had that I've never really put myself out there to do. And writing more, reading more, music, playing the guitar, doing things that'll make me love myself, and pouring that love internally so that when my future person does come, I am a version of myself that I am proud to be and that I want to share with someone, instead of a version of myself that depends on someone else's love and validation to feel okay. But yeah, I intended this to be a 10-minute video because I actually made a couple of tiny notes. I don't know if you saw me looking at it. And I ended up rambling for however long this final cut will be, probably like 30 minutes. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. This will probably be the first of many videos. If you guys have any topics you want me to talk about, please feel free in the comments. And I really, really appreciate you sticking with me this whole time. And if you liked hearing me up, then subscribe. I love you. Thank you. Bye.